Welcome to Where Are They Now? I am your host, Heather Lindstedt from the Chelmsford High alumni class of 1985, and today joining me is Brian Acheson from the class of 1998. Brian, thank you for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes?
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, long history in the town of Chelmsford, right? You grew up here and been kind of a Chelmsfordite. Was there any real change when you entered the high school situation as a freshman?
As a I don't, not quite sure what you're asking.
Well, you grow up in this town and you think you know it all, and then all of a sudden you're in high school and it's a little bit different than what everybody thinks. But you really got involved in a lot of things.
Yeah. I think growing up, I went through Westlands and then McCarthy, and when I hit the high school, I think I was just in rhythm already. I always did a lot of things as a youth, and getting to high school, getting involved in the activities just felt natural. So.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of that, though, is kind of the environment that the teachers and the deans and the principal bring to Chelmsford High?
Absolutely. The teachers have always been welcoming and supporting of the students, and getting them involved in activities was something to kind of build that culture that Chelmsford High has such a great history of.
Now, where are you in the family? Were you first into the high school, or did you have some siblings ahead of you?
I have two younger siblings,
Okay.
but my mom is a Chelmsford High graduate, so I can't say I'm the first one to go through the high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you feel like there was any pressure or expectations from your brother and sister or siblings?
I have two sisters.
Two sisters to be like, what's it like?
Not really. We were always a tight-knit family, so it wasn't like, hey, they kind of saw what I did, and they just, when they got to high school, they jumped right in just like I did.
Yeah.
So.
Did you feel any pressure? I mean, you're young, you got involved in a lot of sports.
Yep.
Talk about that when you're joining a team and how you felt joining. Because, I mean, obviously ahead of you are a lot of talented athletes, and that's always kind of loyal.
My freshman year started the soccer team, and jumping right in that right before even school starts, you're at your captain's practices and tryouts. And I think the culture of everybody was very accepting, and the upperclassmen were very supporting of the freshmen, and kind of helped us find our footing the first couple of weeks. And then I think once we got through that, it was you just kind of felt like you were part of the team and able to move on. And it kind of went with all the different sports, that the culture of the sports was just to kind of make sure that the people coming up in line were going to feel comfortable and take on the legacy.
Yeah. How was it academically for you for the transition, and who were some teachers that kind of inspired you and made sure that you made it through?
Academically, I'll admit I wasn't the best student, but that's probably because I was so busy doing other stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of teachers that I considered mentors, and Mr. Pasquale for AP Calculus, Ms. Coffey for American Government and Politics. I even go back to like my elementary school teachers were influential in how I grew up, and so there's a lot of teachers that I really looked up to.
So how did you get kind of pushed into the sciences? How did that?
Well, that actually goes to a 7th grade science teacher, Mr. Dennis Hunt. He had such a great class when I had him that I was like, ooh, biology seems like what I want to do. And then my inclination was to go towards that science field and just explore it. And as I hit high school, I love the sciences. And I got out of the Chelmsford High and went on to college to study biology. And I blame that all on Mr. Hunt. You do? Yep.
He was the inspiration.
Yep, and he and I would contact each other every now and then while I was in college. He'd be like, hey, you want to do this cool thing? He wanted to send me off to Africa to go tag elephants, and I'm like, no, that's too much for me.
It was too much. Yeah. So, but you played sports all 4 years,
all 4 years,
right?
yep.
And how was it, like, I mean, because volleyball not always gets the attention that probably, it's a great sport, but how is it playing a sport like volleyball that really people didn't really know about?
To a point, it was kind of a little bit of a relief, because the pressure wasn't there to be that elite athlete that everybody's like, watch and see if it's the running back from the football team or whatever. And volleyball for boys back then was a much less observed sport. But we started to build that program more and more while I was there. And it was cool to not have the pressure of being like an elite sport that everybody's trying to watch, but having a good time and competing hard was definitely one of the perks of that.
So how did you get involved in it when it's not really something that like the rec departments have and those kind of things? How did you get involved?
I got involved because the coaches at the time came to a basketball practice and said, "Hey,
And who were
you
they?
guys," that was Karen Robillard-Lococo, and I don't remember the other coach's name.
Okay.
But yeah, they came to a basketball practice and said, "Hey, you guys can jump. A lot of the skills you need for volleyball, you have in basketball." And I said, "I'd like to try that," and so I did.
Yeah. Did they recruit any of other basketball players?
No, I was the only one that made that transition. A lot of the other ones were playing baseball at that time, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So that has turned into something that you really love, though.
Yes. After high school, I played it in college on club teams, and it just was that just linked to me, and it's definitely my favorite sport by far. And I went on, I even coached a little bit at Western Academy for several years, and somebody said, "Hey, you want to come to the dark side and become a volleyball official?" And so I said yes, and I've been officiating for almost 20 years now.
Really?
Yep.
So how about, but when you went to UMass, right?
Yep.
How did you get involved? Was it intramurals? Or?
There was intramurals, but they also had a men's club program, so it was it's kind of like a cross between the division, the NCAA's, and intramurals, where the teams are run by the students, and then we compete against other schools in the area.
And how did you guys do?
We were not the best team, but UMass Dartmouth was a small school at that time. We were playing against like UConn and some of the other big schools that had a lot of people to draw from.
Yeah.
We were competitive, but we definitely didn't win any trophies.
So you're going into the sciences. How did you choose the school? And was volleyball involved in that?
Volleyball was not involved in it. Actually, UMass Dartmouth was my fallback school. There was some issues with the FAFSA reform, and I get no financial aid, unfortunately. And so I ended up going to UMass Dartmouth. It's just that was my fallback school, and I got there and I loved it, and I never left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it funny though how sometimes people put so much pressure on where they're going to go to school, and in reality, it just kind of works out.
Yeah.
Like you look at a lot of different schools and you think, how is this going to happen? But
Right.
and so then they had the volleyball though. Too.
Yeah, we had the volleyball, and my freshman year, I kind of was looking around to find out what clubs, and I saw volleyball, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go join that." And by the end of my sophomore year, I ended up running it for the last couple of years of my college education there. So.
Oh, you ran the team.
Yep. So I ended up being the president, coach, whatever you want to call me.
Yeah. Did you have to do the schedule and try to stay away from the UConns of the world?
No, well, we didn't get to pick the schedule. There was a lot of tournaments that we signed up for, and so we would sign up. I was responsible for signing up the team for the tournaments and managing the money and making sure we had uniforms, that type of thing.
Yeah. Because of Mr. Hunt, though, you went into the sciences, and he had lofty goals, it sounds like, for you.
Yeah.
But what did you really think you wanted to do with the sciences?
Honestly, when I got out of high school, I was going to become an orthopedic surgeon. And like I said, my academics in high school weren't the greatest. They were solid, but they weren't the greatest. And then that continued a little bit on into my college career. So I knew I didn't have the grades to go into med school. So from there, I kind of shifted gears and started looking at other biological sciences.
Yep.
I had a friend at UMass Lowell that introduced me to biotechnology. And so I started doing that for a while. I did a couple internships while I was at UMass Dartmouth. And then when I went for my master's at UMass Lowell, I worked in a biotech lab there. And I loved the science, the biotech sciences. It was so much fun exploring, trying to figure out like vaccines for cancer, that type of thing. And so I went into that field for a couple of years, and there was just something missing from it. And that's when I decided to make my career switch over to being a teacher. So
and for the same reason, to inspire young kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Just like Mr. Hunt.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was definitely one of those inspirations. Between him and my love of guiding youth through Boy Scouts and coaching, and I'm like, that seems to be the field that was pulling me that direction. And my wife's a teacher as well, so she's like, yeah, that might be something you'd be good at. And so,
What, like you say, there was something missing. Is it just the communication, or like I'm sure in the biotech you were working in a team,
yeah, it was
but was it the to inspire others, or how was that?
I think I wanted maybe a little bit more of a leadership role and wanted to work with people in a different way than I was.
Yep.
And I just wasn't getting that in the biotech field. And I love the science, but it just didn't feel like it was my calling. So I decided to make that switch.
But you talked about the Boy Scouts too, that you've always been involved in
Yes. Yep.
that. And I'm bringing this up because I think teachers get a bad rap. Some people think that they're just doing it to teach because it's a job. But in reality, you probably have which is being able to relate to students and to obviously inspire them to have success in something.
I hope so.
Yeah. And do you feel like that's where you're going? And you went directly to Chelmsford? Or
I went directly to Chelmsford. Mr. Thomas, who was principal at the time, interviewed me, and by the time I was in the car, I got a telephone call saying, hey, we want you to come back and teach. And I went, okay, I'll come back to Chelmsford.
And did you always think it was going to be at the high school level?
Yes, yeah. I wanted to use that biology degree, and the biotechnology, I would have loved and did help bring biotechnology to Chelmsford High School.
Yep.
And I knew that was the upcoming bio field that we have a lot of opportunity here in Massachusetts. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that that was brought into the classroom, and fortunately I've been able to do that. So
you've designed the curriculum?
Yes, and myself, and there's been other teachers that have had influence, but we've had that course at Chelmsford High for over 10 years now.
And how many kids have gone through it?
A lot.
Yeah?
Yeah. I want to say on average 50 to 100 kids every year are taking the course.
Yeah.
So.
And has it inspired anybody like you?
Yes, I get a lot of response back from some of my former students going, hey, this is awesome. I'm glad you introduced this to me. Here's what I'm doing. And I know a bunch of students that are like, oh, I'm doing neurobiology with a biotech influence at like Stanford. And I'm like, that's awesome. Keep going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you've inspired them for different pathways, different colleges.
Yep.
Now, is it kind of crazy, like, you know, you talked about financial aid, that students now, they'll go anywhere in the country now.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like back even, you know.
I want to say half of my graduating class went to UMass Amherst.
Correct, right.
So, and now it's a lot less that do that, so.
Yeah. Is that a strange feeling, though, that they're leaving Chelmsford, and that you know, or do you think that you would have taken advantage of it now?
I looked around when I looked at different areas, and I like down to Delaware and looked at some colleges there. I think for me, it was just wherever I was going to end up, I'd feel comfortable going.
Yeah.
But the students having that opportunity to spread out and go all sorts of different places is great. I think that's awesome. I do feel like the culture to get out of Chelmsford is a little bit different than when I was a student, where a lot more homebodies back then.
Yeah.
But now I think the kids are less of a homebody, and it's just the change in culture, I think, worldwide too, that people are traveling.
Now, that course that you're teaching, but what grades do you teach?
So I teach college prep biology to sophomores, honors biology is freshmen and sophomores, and the biotech is to anybody who's passed biology.
Okay.
So it could be anywhere from a sophomore to a senior taking that class.
Now, you never wanted to go into coaching, or did you?
Well, I coached volleyball for a little while.
Okay.
I coached for 4 years at Westford Academy, but when I had my kids, it was just too much when they were young to be traveling all over and hanging out with other people's kids and not my own. So I had to step back from the coaching.
So how did it lead to this officiating? Because I mean, you were officiating at the high school level.
Yep. So I started off officiating at the high school level. The nice thing about officiating, you get to pick your own schedule. Yeah. So I wasn't stuck 5-6 days a week doing volleyball. I was able to pick a couple days a week and get into that. And working through the high school and meeting a lot of new officials and taking pride in that refereeing has kind of brought me to the level I'm at, where now I get to travel to do college matches. I do all the way up to Division I. I travel doing the Junior Olympic Club volleyball, where I've been all over the country refereeing championships. And as my kids have gotten older, it's given me the opportunity to do more of this travel and be
Now,
able to.
do they play volleyball?
My oldest son does.
Yeah.
He's 14. Yeah, he's started playing club last year.
Okay.
And my youngest one does not play volleyball. He's more of a baseball kid right now, but we'll see what happens. So.
But what are the fans like at volleyball?
The fans are typically pretty good. We do have some of the traditional, like, my kid's awesome, don't call a bad play on him. But for the most part, they're all really good. I find volleyball is a very a tight-knit community where we all kind of understand and appreciate every aspect of the sport. And I go all over the place, and I'll bump into somebody like, hey, I know you from volleyball, and then we'll be able to chat. And I've never found like I'm better than you or any of that from volleyball. It's always because it is such a team sport.
Yep.
That everybody just kind of collaborates and gets together and has a good time.
Now, is boys volleyball like girls volleyball, where there's a lot of cheering and you have no idea why they're cheering? Is that the same?
There
and
is.
do you referee both girls?
I referee both genders.
Yeah.
So I find with the girls there's definitely a lot more cheering, and if you know the sport, you know what the cheers are and you enjoy them. And there's definitely some really good ones out there. The boys, not as much of the cheers, but they still get pumped up and cheer each other on. It's not the organized rah 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 cheers.
Okay. Yeah. What level do you want to get to? Like, would you be able to get to the Olympics? I mean, how do you?
I will not be able to get to the Olympics. I am too old to get to that point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's they kind of have an age group in which I started getting getting more serious about volleyball a little later than I could have if I had wanted to go to the Olympics. Okay. That's hard to do. You figure there's one or two officials from the U.S. that get to work the Olympics. So while I like to think I'm pretty good, there are definitely officials that are much better than me out there.
But we're losing officials.
We are losing officials. Yeah, it's the average age of volleyball officials right now is over 55.
Yeah. And
there's unfortunately, because we have the culture from like TV and everybody being able to like nitpick what officials do. It kind of discourages the young people from being able to kind of want to do it. In fact, I'm part of the New England region of volleyball. For the club volleyball, we're starting a new program, and I'm taking lead on getting youth to become trained as youth to try to get the experience and feel for it. So maybe when they're done playing, they can step into the role of being a volleyball official themselves. So.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, because you just said like it's not really the screaming and yelling fans like some other sports that like that sport of ice hockey. That's just silly, right? That's crazy.
I only once have I ever had a fan base that was that crazy, and it was a college night, and they were celebrating a little bit too much before they showed up. So that's the only time I've ever had an issue with fans, really.
So within your personality, how did you think science and volleyball merged?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. It's that one. The merger of science and volleyball. I don't know that there is really a connection. I think it's just those are the passions I've had that I just want to pursue and keep going with.
Yeah. So are you passing that on to your kids?
As of right now, yes. Like I said, my oldest is playing volleyball, and he the other day was like, I'm thinking about maybe I want to be a biology teacher. I'm like, you're mini-me, except he's actually taller than I am. But and my younger son, he's got a little bit more of his mother in that aspect of not quite. Well, my wife played volleyball too, but he's not quite into volleyball, but he's pursuing his own interests, which I don't think he's got a career in mind yet because he's only 12.
Yeah.
But yeah, he loves his baseball and his friends that he plays with, so it's where he wants to be.
So
right
your wife is a volleyball player, so is there like backyard volleyball all the time? or no?
Sometimes during the summer, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, on Monday she's off playing with friends. So right now I think she's
Okay.
out playing with some friends.
Yeah.
And so yeah, she when she graduated college, she kind of laid off of it for a little while.
Yeah.
And so now that her friends are like, hey, we're gonna have a nice easy time, come play in the backyard, and so she's like, okay.
Right.
So yeah.
But it's really funny that volleyball, and I know I'm talking a lot about it, but the growth of volleyball, like,
Yes.
I think for women's sports last year, the largest attended event
Yep.
was, I think, Oklahoma, right?
Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It was
Yep.
90,000 something,
yeah, 90,
right?
Yeah, 90. I think it was like 92,000 that went to a volleyball match.
For women.
Yeah, for women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so would you get to officiate anything like that?
I'm hoping to some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now I'm in the lower rankings of the Division I referees, and I'm working my way up. And
Okay.
I'd love to get to that point. And
So like the NCAA
Yep.
finals and stuff.
yeah, that would be fantastic. I'm actually scheduled to work the Division III championship tournament this year.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get the finals, but
And where would that be?
it's to be determined. Depends on
okay.
how the teams play out this year.
Oh, Division III. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like who's
Yep.
in charge? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's okay with your teaching schedule?
Yes, it is. Fortunately, most of the college matches all the college matches are at night and
Yeah.
on the weekends.
Yeah.
So
But even with the travel?
yeah, even with the travel.
Yeah.
7:00 match at like Dartmouth this past Friday. I was able to leave. 3:00 gets me up there in time to make it for my match.
Yeah. And still get home?
And still get home. Yeah.
And the kids still see you, so it's not.
Yes.
So what would it take what would you, I shouldn't say take, what has changed from you being a student at Chelmsford High to what it's like now?
What it's
What
like
would
now?
be the biggest change? I mean, there's a lot of people that
Yep.
went through Chelmsford High, but like what have you guys had to change or you felt it has to be different within the,
Well, the technology, of course.
Okay.
And especially when COVID hit, we went to one-to-one devices. That made
Yeah.
things a little bit different as a teacher. But I think a lot of the culture is still there of having the kids all pumped for being students at Chelmsford High.
yeah,
So that's one of the things that stayed the same. I think the teachers still, there's still a lot that's the same. The teachers still care about the students and want to make a difference in their lives. So really not a lot has changed
so
in that aspect.
if a new teacher comes in that's not from Chelmsford, is there like a learning curve for that person?
They a lot of times, so I've seen quite a few teachers come in, and a lot of times they're like, wow, I didn't realize the school spirit was like this. And they're a little bit taken aback, like our pep rallies. And they're like, oh yeah, we've been to pep rallies at other schools. And then they get to Chelmsford, like, oh my gosh, this is so much more intense than what we've come
Right.
to know in the past. So yeah, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but again, every teacher coming in that really wants to be there is enjoying it. And
Right.
yeah.
Right. So, but I mean, do the students ask you what it was like ever?
Not as much now, seeing how many of my students are kids of the kids I graduated.
Oh, boy, yeah? Okay.
So I'm seeing a lot of familiar last names come through. I'm like, oh, I graduated with your uncle or
Yeah,
your
yeah.
dad. So I don't. They ask, and there's a few things that have come and gone. Like during Spirit Week, we no longer have the spirit walls, and so I have some in my classroom. I have some remnants of the spirit walls of the past. Like, what's that from? Like, then I have to explain those type of things.
Yeah.
But for the most part, a lot of the same traditions are carried on and are still, the kids get to experience some of what their parents got to experience when they were at Chelmsford.
So sometimes, you know, a student athlete will say, "Oh my God, I sound just like my coach," you
Yeah.
know, and they never want to do that. Is there something that Mr. Hunt and sometimes it comes out of you and you're like, "Oh my God, I learned that so long ago," and it's just something that resonated with what he said? Because I mean, talk about high energy. I mean,
Yeah.
there he is. But is there anything like that you're like, I just sound just like Mr. Hunt.
I think it's the energy, like you said, that I really like. I loved how he just had that passion for the students, a passion for the subject, and I wanted to carry that. So if I'm thinking about it, that's the thing that's got me going. Like, yeah, I like Mr. Hunt in that aspect. So
So when you got in the classroom, like that was kind of, you already knew like your planning and
Yeah.
those kind of things of like how it is.
yeah, learning to teach on the fly, because that's what my first year was a bit of a fun challenge. But having that enthusiasm was already built in. So learning how to teach stuff, it's always changing because the students coming in are always different in some way or another. And so, you're always learning new techniques and new ways to reach the children. And it's, as long as you have that passion, you can make that change happen.
So in your classroom, if somebody was to say, this is what Mr. Acheson brings to me, what do you think they would, how would they describe you, or what would you think that they would say?
I'm hoping they would say he loves the science and he cares about me, and that again, when I introduced my class at the start of the year, I'm like, I want you to experience science. I want you to get a feel for what it is to have an experiment and go through the process. It's not just memorize these words. I want you to kind of feel like science is something you want to explore and ask questions and try to get answers. And even if you don't go into science later on, that you have those skills which come in handy in any field you go into. And so I'm hoping that's what they get out of it from me.
Yeah, that would be the icing icing on the cake.
Yep.
Really.
Yeah.
One thing though that you would ever change though from your experience when you were a high school student to now, would there be anything that you really thought like, I can't wait to make this change, besides the nice curriculum that you brought?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's much that I would have wanted to change to either get rid of or bring in, besides the biotech. I think the program Chelmsford has offered has been solid throughout the time. So I really don't think there's something that needed to be removed or added in that wasn't already being done. So.
Well, I think that you're doing a terrific job. I'm going to be looking for you on TV now to volleyball as an official. But I really do appreciate the energy that you have brought and what you've brought to the students at Chelmsford High. So congratulations to you on that.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on the show. For everybody else, thank you very much. I hope you truly enjoyed meeting with Brian. I know I did. So come back again for Where Are They Now?